Welcome to the call. I'm very excited for this tonight. This is something that never done before. I've got my now client, Corey Welsh, on the phone. Welcome, Corey.
Thank you.
Yeah, all the way from
here.
Chicago. So I'm excited to have you. You got your kids kind of down or sleeping?
They're muzzled in the back room with a Disney movie. So yes.
That's pretty good. Yeah, my son, who's 9 as well, he's usually sleeping by now, but he just got up and came in my room. I'm like, I can't talk to you right now. So, but you know what? That's the advantage of having an at-home business, right?
Yes, you never know what's going to happen. Yep.
Absolutely. So, yeah, we're going to get rolling on this, and this is the whole objective of this is, I've had a full-time coaching business for the past 11 plus years, and the number one way that I get clients is exactly what I'm going to outline tonight. This is my method, and what the method is, like in a nutshell, is whenever there's two different things. Whenever I get someone who subscribes to my database via my website, so someone goes to my website and enters their name and email address to get the free offer to become a part of my database, I will get that at the end of every week, and I will get the new subscribers, and I will get the people who have unsubscribed from my database. Every single new subscriber I will reach out to. There's always their email there, and I'll just simply say, hey, it's Jeff. I noticed you subscribed to my website, my database, sellingcoaching.com. Nice to meet you. I'd love to hear a little bit more about yourself and your motivation for joining. Anyone that likes my Facebook page for my Selling Coaching business or whatever I've had in the past, anyone who joins my private Facebook group, anyone that friend requests me on my Facebook, I reach out to those people individually, every single one of them, and usually it's not too many at a time, but especially if I'm doing a promotion or a call or things like that, even with emails that I receive, anyone that I don't know, I will always make it a point to reach out to those people, and I will engage with them. And that's the beginning of this method. And it's not a tactic. It's not anything more than me just being genuine about, hey, I want to get to know you a little bit. I want to connect with you, and I want to find out more about you, especially if someone is coming to me, either a friend request or, liking my page or things like that. Like, we need to know as coaches, we need to know who this person is and what's their motivation for liking you or sending a friend request or signing up for your email database. There's a reason. We don't know what the reason is. It doesn't mean always that, they're going to hire you as a coach or they're going to buy something from you. But we want to make sure, because what I've learned over the years is that people don't come right out and say, hey, I checked out your stuff. I like it. I'm in the market for a coach. I'd like to talk to you. So when I say 9 out of 10 clients hire me this way, this is what happens. On my sellingcoaching.com university, I have 2 other videos where I've done how to follow up, and I've done an email thread just like this. So if you're on the call right now, you would have that email thread open in front of you. If you're watching this recording, you're going to have it in a video format, and the thread's going to be right in front of you so you can follow along as we go through the call. And in those videos on the university, I go through just by myself, and I talk about, hey, here's what I was thinking. Look at the time. Here's what I think. Here's what I noticed here. Here's what I'm looking for. I'm going to do that tonight, but I thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I asked Corey, who's my new client, who's on the line, I'm like, I wonder if I could ask her to say, hey, you know what, would you be willing to kind of have this back and forth dialogue with me? So not only, you could learn by listening to kind of what I was thinking, but I'm like, I want people to hear, the, quote, potential client, and as they're going through this process, what are they thinking? So this is a real-life scenario. So, Corey, thank you for doing this. I really very much appreciate this.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is a great opportunity, and, so I'm excited to join.
So we're going to dive right in, and I just want people to know, this is real life. This is not staged. Corey and I didn't talk about this at all other than saying, hey, just read through the thread on your own so you can kind of refresh your memory on some of the things you said or I said. But we didn't plan this in terms of what we're going to say, or this is just in the moment, and we're no holds barred. We're just going to go right at it so we can get in the mindset of everybody else. So let's do this. So on the thread there, that is the initial conversation via Facebook message. And we were talking before the call, and I believe we were on we graduated from the same coaching school, IPEC, and we were on a similar thread, and you were making a few comments on that thread. And I believe I engaged with you from there. Mm-hmm. And we became friends. And if I remember correctly, because this is typically what I do, is if I start interacting or people start going back and forth with someone on a thread, and this could be in any group where they're making comments, I will then look at their profile, and this is like a Facebook interaction. I will look at their profile, and I'll learn a little bit about them. I'll say, oh, and I try and figure out, well, how would I know this person? In this case, it seemed obvious that I would know this person from, our commonality through the school that we went to together. And what I do is I typically will friend request that person, and then I will private message them and just kind of reach out to them. And that's what that first thread there is, where it says, great to see a fellow IPEC student. Did you graduate? Are you still going through? And do you coach full-time? And usually I just kind of just say, hey, what's going on? And our common thread was, we're a fellow student. And so I just like to not do too much and just ask some questions because, hey, I'm a coach. And I just want to see initially, my thought there is I just want to initially see kind of, is this person going to respond at all? And so Corey comes in there. So Corey, just when you get that thread, tell me what's going on in your mind.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I don't even remember what we had been commenting on through, there's a private Facebook group for our coaching school, IPEC, and I cannot remember what I commented on, but it was something, you had made some sort of poignant comment, and I was like, oh, he really knows what he's talking about. So I either liked it or commented on it, and that's how we connected. So, when you sent that, it was awesome. It was like, oh, cool. And so I did the same thing, kind of went on and saw your background. It's always nice to connect with other fellow IPECers. What do you call IPECies?
Yeah.
And so I noticed that you had an exercise science background. I did too. I don't know how, through my Facebook stalking, I found out that you have a 9-year-old son, and, I have kiddos too. So it's like, oh, okay, cool. Someone who's kind of in the same boat, and that's how we got to talking.
Okay. And at this point, it sounds like you were maybe impressed by a comment, like you said, oh, I think he seems like he knows what he's talking about. So we engaged. You looked, you kind of looked it back and said, oh, we had some commonalities. At this point, out of curiosity, had coaching with me or working with me in any capacity even crossed your mind?
After I kind of see my background is sales, as you and I have been talking, and we'll talk further through this call, I tend to be very leery of being sold to. So I knew you were in that business just from going through your Facebook profile, but in the same sense, it was like, okay, well, he's not coming at me going, hey, check out this, that, check the, you were genuinely interested in what my needs were, which was very cool.
That's good.
Which kind of hooked me in.
This is good. And even at this point, I'm just asking a few questions. And so, she writes in that first thread, hey, great to connect not only with a fellow grad, but exercise science background. And so as I'm reading that, she's obviously, she responded in the thread. You can see the time. It's 5 minutes after my response. So those are just different things that I look for. And initially when I'm, sending an email or anything like this, whether it's an email or a message, I'm the same way. It's I'm not looking, here's a potential client. But also you have to realize, this is what I want you to think as a coach. I want you to think well, this could be a potential client. You don't know that this person's not, but I'm not going into it I'm going for that. So at this point, I don't have any agenda besides I want to get to know who Corey is. I want to get to know a little bit more about her. Obviously, in the initial thing, that's why I'm asking those questions. And then obviously when I read what she's writing, I realize I'm okay, well, she's stalking me. Joking.
Yeah.
She's obviously looking into what I'm doing, and she's reading about me. And then in the next thread underneath that, she says, tell me about True You Now. So right away, when anyone is doing something like that, obviously they're showing some interest in you in the sense of they're taking some time to learn about you. So these are some things I want you to pay attention to as a coach, is that, most people who are just in a very casual conversation, I create these type of conversations all the time. And if I sent an initial thread like I just did up top there, did you graduate, still going through, do you coach full time? Most people will just get, oh yeah, just very like 1 or 2 line answers, and the conversation just doesn't go very far. Mm-hmm. So if we scroll down a little bit more, she says, hey, tell me about True You Now. And if you notice, I don't jump right in. I respond about 28 minutes later or so. Mm-hmm. I don't respond like, oh my God, here's about my business. Mm-hmm. I'm just like, oh no way, that's awesome. She talked about in the previous thread about how she just graduated or turned in all her paperwork 41 minutes earlier. And I'm like, wow, we have a similar background, very cool. It's always exciting to develop your brand. So like where I'm going is I want to show her that I'm interested. Because I am interested, and I thought it was really cool that we had a similar background. So I'm just, making some chit-chat and just engaging and reiterating on some points. Because when it comes to selling in business, the worst thing we can do is, even if we did have an agenda, it's like, yeah, we want clients. And when I go through different threads and when I connect with different people, like, well, yeah, I think I'm like, well, these could be potential clients, but like I said, you've got to be genuine, and you've got to genuinely want to connect with that person. So I did say, hey, my True You Now, it's my seminar and coaching company I've had since '04, and I just launched my new brand, super excited about it, and that's right, I gave her my website, it's my new baby, and here's where I want to show you that when I do this, whenever I actually give someone my information like this, I wouldn't have talked about this if she didn't ask for it. But if you notice, the way I present it was not like anything about like you should check it out. Other than I wrote super excited about it if you care to check it out. So if you notice, I use that language as opposed to like you should check it out. And I want to highlight something like that because I'm really careful with those words. I did put the website. And if you notice, I just share my excitement. It's my new baby. I'm actually having a call tonight if you care to join. Again, it's not, oh, you should join. Here's the call-in number. I kind of put out there, hey, I'm actually having a call tonight if you care to join. And then I go right back into, hey, do you know what direction you're heading in? Because it can't make it about me. I don't want to make it about me. I want to find out more about Corey. So, Corey, take over a little bit, kind of thoughts on that and then about your response.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was fine because, we're all in it to, sell to others. So I can totally respect that. And that's the great thing about you, Jeff, is I never felt like it was being shoved down my throat. I felt like you were really, truly wondering, where my need is, what my niche is, what stage in the game I was in. And, when you threw that out there, I'm like, oh, Tuesdays are tough. Mondays and Tuesdays are typically tough. I'm a single mom. I've got 2 kiddos. So Tuesdays are generally difficult. And what I really appreciated, though, is that you brought a little bit of your personal info into it, too, by saying, oh, yeah, I have a son as well, a 9-year-old son. And so I thought that was really cool that you were willing to do that. I think a lot of people tend to put up a wall when it comes to their professional life and their personal life and without sharing too much info. And I'm the type of person that resonates with someone and connects with someone if I know about them. And I know you're willing to share things like, oh, it's my new baby, I have this new business, it's my new baby. And I know, you have this passion. And so I thought it was really cool that you shared that info, both of those 2 pieces of info with me.
That's awesome. That's really great insight. People really do love that, and when you show passion and excitement and also sharing parts of yourself. I just do that naturally because those pieces are important to me. But then it's you never know where those things take you, especially with connections. And whenever I'm engaging in these conversations, we obviously had a strong connection through the school we went to, and then obviously graduating from exercise science, right? It's so like right off, like we had something really in common. But then also I start to share things like that because it's like, you know what, I don't know what her situation is in terms of children or living situations. So you can find other commonalities where you just can bond and connect with people. And the connection's important, especially in these dialogues, because you don't know this person. So when you connect, you relax more, and you begin to trust more, and you begin to open it up. Corey, I like how you said how, typically you don't like to be sold to or feel pressured or anything like that, and you're a little weary of that stuff. And so that's where this stuff starts to kind of can relax you a little bit. Did you start to feel more relaxed as we started to go through like this?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think, as you had said before, the key was not so much talking about what you had to offer, but what I needed. And that seems like the driving force behind a lot of this messaging.
Yeah, and if I just go back up for a second, when she asked, tell me about True You Now, this is a common error for coaches where most people, when someone asks them about their business, tell me about, your business, this is where people tend to throw up on the people, so to speak, like, oh, you want to know about my business? Great. So they can go on and on. I answered about it, but I just kind of kept the conversation, I kept the focus on her, and that's what I really want to stress. And even if you notice when, she responded back to that, hey, I typically Tuesdays are tough, I'll do my best to hop on the call, she responded, and then, I got the message that night at 8:44 p.m., about 3+ hours later, and this is like about 15 minutes before the call, and I noticed that, and I noticed she didn't say anything about, anything in response to what I had said with my business or more about her business. So I'm just like, hey, I look forward to hearing more about your business, because I'm like, she didn't say anything about it, so I want to know about that. Then the thread continues on, and it goes to the next day, right in the morning. Hey, we had an awesome call last night, I wrote. If you want the call recording, let me know. I'm not sure if you're part of my database or not. If you are, then you'll automatically get it. Now, this is an important point I want to point out here. Is the reason I wrote that is because I don't know what's going to happen between Corey and I, right? We obviously had a great connection. We obviously had a lot of similarities. She obviously is just graduated from school, and I know she's wanting to do something with her coaching business. So in the back of my mind is that I know if she was in a place to work with a coach, I know I could assist her because of what I do, right? So I don't know where this is going to go, and I obviously want her to be able to listen to my stuff and my recordings and my education, because I know that this can benefit her. Whether she works with me or not, I know this could benefit her. So I want to make sure that, hey, that she's on my database, so she's going to be getting this stuff on a regular basis. Additionally, I want to make sure of that because I don't want to feel like if she's not, whenever and however this messaging ends, which is going to end at some point, right, I don't want her to just, be gone. I'm like, here's someone we created a great connection with. So I want to find a way, besides coming out right out and asking, hey, you should join my database, right? So in other words, I went back on an interest of hers, oh, yeah, I can't make the call, but I'd love to. I said, hey, we had a great call. Let me know if you want the call recording. So I'm always keeping it about them. Let me know if you want it. Not sure if you're part of my database. If you are, then you get it. And if you notice after that, I went back into, hey, I understand that you had your kids. It's important to be with them because I'm like, hey, I know that. My son is 9 and started 4th grade today. So what that for me is well, I know she has kids because she said, she can't be on the call because of the kids. So I'm like, I've got a 9-year-old. I want to share that with her and find out, where it goes. And I want to find out more about our kids. So Corey, take it from there.
So what you don't realize, Jeff, is that when you had said when we were talking the previous day, I was actually sitting in a doctor's office struggling with my Wi-Fi connection. So I'm sending you messages and mentally told myself, oh, yeah, I need to sign up for his database so I can get the call recordings. So when you had sent that reminder the next day, I think we as entrepreneurs and coaches think, I don't want to bother, I don't want to harass, seem like I'm, being pushy. But when you had sent that message about your call, if you want, the recording, that actually planted a feel like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot. I went in for my doctor's appointment and I totally forgot to sign up. So I looked at that as, oh yeah, I got to do that.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, I got on your Facebook group, and it was great because it was non-threatening. I could listen to the recordings at my leisure when I had time. And to me, it was very non-committal at that point.
And how is that non-committal for you? Like as a potential client, as just a person who's interacting with someone, how important is that for you?
As I'm learning more about myself, it's very important to be able to set my own terms and timeline. And so I love the idea of being able to listen to the recordings when I could and really be present for them. So I liked that versus feeling like it was an obligation. I didn't feel like it was an obligation.
Awesome. That's good to know. And I truly believe that a lot of prospects will feel, and technically you're not like a prospect, if you will, right? But we're going down the direction of connecting with each other, and there's potential, but we're not talking about it. And if you notice, I'm staying on the outside. I'm just having a conversation, but I'm not like crossing a line. And the line is like an approach. The line is the approach of transitioning from, hey, here's where we are now, and now the line is saying, hey, do you want to do something with me? Do you want to work with me? Do you want to, this is where you're selling someone something, essentially, right? So I'm always staying on the other side of that line, and I'm still always referring it back to the connection, So I talk about, hey, the call, and then I go, hey, I know you want to be with your kids. My son's 9, and so now you wrote back, sorry I missed it. Love the recording. Hey, I liked your Facebook page, but I don't think I sent it for the database. As you said, it was a great reminder, so you do that today. My 9-year-old started 4th grade as well. It's been a rocky road. You talked about some of the things you've been dealing with him as well. And so now I'm looking at this, I'm like, oh, you know what? We now have a further connection. Both got a 9-year-old, so it's other things that you have in common. And when you find things you have in common with people, like I said, it really relaxes people, and it just forms a greater conversation and more ease of topics you can talk about. And I am also noticing, too, as I'm observing, she's also very responsive. I haven't looked much at the time stamps on these, but if you can see, they're all within, 20, 30 minutes of each other. And so there's good consistent conversation. She's talking about how she's considering working with parenting with kids for her niche. And so, just moving on so we can keep going with this. I wrote back later, we have a lot in common, LOL. It can be challenging that age, and if you're passionate about it, it would be a great niche. And I tend to use a lot of exclamation marks, if you notice. But that's just like how I am. Like I'm excited, and I don't know, just it's a great thing to use exclamation marks. Yeah. And I always like to see. I'm curious, Corey, because I've never asked anyone this. What is it about those exclamation marks? Do you notice them at all, or what's the impact of that, if anything?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it shows enthusiasm for sure, which to me is huge. I respond really well to that, and it's less annoying than a bunch of emojis.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think it's huge. I think it definitely, you come across as very passionate.
Good to hear, yeah. And so what I'd recommend is don't everyone start like just using exclamation marks. I mean, like it's got to be you. It's got to just do what's natural for you. And if you use emojis or whatever, like just find your style. It's got to be authentic. But those are just little things that, I mean, like when I do it, I don't think about it. I just go with it. And that's the biggest thing is in these conversations. It's like, have fun with it. I'm writing LOLs and and I wrote something like, I think every mom thinks their kids are struggling in school because they all want them to do better, LOL. So it's just pulling in from things that I've seen and heard, and then, next thing she writes back a little bit later in the day, about 3 hours later, hey, I've always operated on the mentality that I honestly care what grades in school he gets as long as he learns compassion for others. So here I'm reading this, and I'm like, wow, what a great mom. Like, she really understands her kids. She's really passionate about them, and she's really concerned about their well-being. And so, I just wrote back, I think it was later that night, hey, you're an incredible mom, I can tell, and your passion for that niche is clear. So, boom, end of conversation. So this is a good point, because if you notice, nothing really happened with this besides a great connection. That's the way I felt. What about you, Corey?
I was fully expecting you the next day to try to sell me something, and you didn't.
Really? Tell me about that.
I just did. I felt like, oh, okay, well, he's going to, then, like, dive in at any moment and be like, sign up for this, buy this book, buy this seminar. And no, you didn't. And in all honesty, I did go and sign up for the database to receive your emails. And, I mean, how much time went by before I
That's going to come
went on
next.
to
23 days later. So
how many days?
23 days later. So if we scroll down on that, the last text
Talk
that
about
we
on
sent.
my own timeline, right?
Yeah. August 26th, and then you went on 23 days later and made that comment on my blog.
Yeah, so
that's over 3 weeks
what,
later.
What got my attention was, and I dabbled in email marketing before, internet marketing, several years ago. So I kind of knew, what hooks people in as far as subject line and this and that. But your subject in one of these emails was like, see what happens when nobody shows up.
Yeah, what's it
like
do when
that's
no one
everyone's
shows
biggest
up?
fear, right? That's like my biggest fear. Oh my gosh, no one's going to show up. I have to listen to this call. I mean, I had like 10 other things on my to-do list that day. I'm like, I got to listen to this and hear this.
What happened in those 23 days? So I want to stop for a second and say, after that email thread, you expected me to come back the next day and sell you something, and I didn't. But I'm curious, what was it, if anything, other than just maybe yourself or maybe something that I did or said, et cetera? I'm curious that made you feel like I would do that. Or had that just been in your experience, like just based on things you had before?
Yep, just experience with, marketing professionals. It was just an expectation, for sure.
Okay. That's good to know.
So when that didn't happen, and I signed up for the database, and to me, I signed up for a lot of that stuff. I mean, I have a lot of emails coming through from coaches and from people wanting to help with my marketing. I am a brand new coach, so I dive into all of this. I try to learn as much as possible. So to me, nothing really stood out as far as what was coming across my email. And in all honesty, during those 23 days or whatnot, I was waiting to get certified, and so I think it was almost a few days later that I was like, okay, I'm certified, I got my certifications, now I'm ready to really dive in and pay attention and focus and find out, where do I need help? So,
The timing of things is important.
Yep, sure is.
The timing, that's what I'm hearing from you.
Yes.
And from my standpoint here, this is important, is that the reason I left that conversation, it's like, yeah, we had a lot in common, but through our conversation, and I'm going to show you the difference between that thread and this thread and why I made an approach and this thread that we're going to go through now. But in the other one, the reason I didn't do anything there or make an approach is because we just connected, and I never saw at any point her talking about a need of hers that she was looking to fill that I could work with her on. I knew I could help her, but through the conversation, it never led to, yeah, I'm struggling with this. It's like, it was more of like, oh, it's a work in progress. There was never any signs of like, yeah, I'm really looking to dive forward. I'm really looking to move forward, or there was nothing like really standing out there. And once I knew she was, part of my database and stuff, part of what I teach people is I'm like, you know what, like just like this call, I'm like, just give people really good, relevant content and don't charge for it. Just give them like kick-ass stuff that's just like, wow, this is like real stuff. Like I'm not having to pay anything for it. I get it and I'm learning from it, and there's no, oh, I'm giving you just enough and now give me your name and email address and I'll give you just a little bit more and then I'm going to have to buy this course.
Crazy. Yes.
Right? And that is everywhere. And what I want to teach through example, first off, and then now through this stuff is like, Corey, could we charge for a call like this? Absolutely. This could easily be a $97 product with, the paperwork, the PDF. This could have been a webinar that we could have charged for or done free and then charged for it after that. This is valuable content for people to understand. But it's like, I want to give it away, and when you give stuff away, what I've found is that people will engage with you, and they'll engage with you through email. There's not one call on Tuesday night that I do where I don't get 2, 3, 4 emails and maybe even blog comments where people are like, hey, I love what you're doing. Thank you so much for doing this. The gratitude and all that good stuff, people appreciate it, and they're learning from it, and then they follow you because they want to follow you. And that's how you stand out. It was really cool to hear you say, Corey, that, you get a lot of emails, because everybody listening to this, we all get a lot of emails. In fact, I would encourage people is like, get rid of a lot of the noise. Find the 2 or 3 people. This is what I do. I have 2, maybe 3 people that I follow at any one given time, just because I'm interested and I'm learning from them currently. Everything else I shut off. I don't necessarily, like I'll make a list. I'll turn off notifications, or I'll unsubscribe, or things like that. But it helps clean out all that noise. But we've got to be able to stand out, and that's why giving away this really good, relevant content is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's jump into this. This is really cool. So 23 days later, you commented on my blog. So you listened to that call. You said you got the email. The title stood out. You were booked that night, but you said, screw it, I got to listen to this. You listened to it, and just briefly talk about like what was going through your mind as you're listening to the call, and what moves you to actually comment on it.
So for those who haven't listened to that call, I found myself getting really nervous for you in the beginning, and I felt like you were extremely just off the cuff and vulnerable, and you're like, what the hell? No, I get one of my clients is on the call and no one else can make it. You weren't, woe is me. You weren't like, wah, poor me, no one's going to show up. You're like, hey, you turn it around to be an optimist, a positive thing. And I thought that was really cool. It was very unscripted. It was very, it turned out to be an incredible call. You used that opportunity to do a one-on-one coaching call with one of your clients who is trying to develop his niche and fine-tune it. And I just thought it was fantastic. And listening to your style, and it resonated very powerfully with me, and I took away several nuggets from it. So that's why I'm like, I feel like a lot of people will listen to this stuff, but they will not ever give feedback. So yeah, I mean, it stood out so powerfully that I left a comment. I didn't even know if you were accepting comments on your blog, but I left a comment. I can't remember what I said, but
well, it's right there on the thread. So it says, first recording I've listened to. Great info, Jeff and Stephen, who's my client that I kind of, quote, interviewed. As a new coach that's launching my business, there were some awesome takeaways, particularly not letting other people's ideas dilute your message. Love your energy! !
Yeah.
So that was that comment.
Yes.
At that point, I'm curious now, had coaching with me ever crossed your mind?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. at what point, before those 23 days or during that call at some point?
So I had hired a coach during those 23 days I hired a parenting coach for 4 sessions. So, I mean, from my previous messages, you can see, I'm clearly kind of tied up with kid stuff, and that was fresh in my mind, and I was not quite at the point where I was like ready to fully launch my business, because I was really focused on talking to you about my son and my kids. So I hired a parenting coach from the same training program from IPEC, who's fantastic, and did 4 sessions with her, and it wasn't until maybe halfway through working with her was when I, left this message and listened to your call. So I knew, I needed to kind of take that extra step, but financially I was like, I don't know. I don't even know what he charges.
So you had thought about it at that point?
I had thought about it at that point, yeah.
Okay. And what was it about anything that made you think about potentially working with me?
After listening to that call and hearing the shift that you helped Stephen with and the shift that I experienced and the energy, that was the kind of day that I was like, oh, I'm just not feeling it. I think it was raining that day. I felt like, okay, this is cool. This is kind of charging me up. I was kind of walking through the process that you were walking Stephen through. And it kind of gave me a taste of, okay, this is what you bring to the table as far as when you work with your clients. But I was still in that non-committal mode. Like, I don't know if this is the investment that I'm ready to take yet. So I was kind of, waiting for some feelers and sending out feelers to find out, all right, well, let's see, let's see if he comes back and tries to sell me, do the hard sell, and then I'll know either, one way or another.
So you did think that at this point, even just from this comment?
Yep.
Wow, interesting. Very interesting. I love hearing this because this is why I want to do this interview because, as people are listening to this, this isn't about her and I. Like, I want you guys to put yourself in this situation and understand these are these people that we interact with. And it's great getting in, Corey's no different than any other potential client that we have, right? So it's really interesting, to hear these types of things. And that's why I wanted to know, what point did it cross your mind that, maybe I could work with this person? And obviously you're very non-committal, as you said, but this is another testament to doing what we do as coaches and putting information out there is you don't know who's listening to this stuff. You don't know who's consuming. You don't know who your fans are, and you don't know what they're thinking. When I received this comment, I'll be honest, I received this comment 1 week later. I didn't even see it. On my blog, I make sure all comments go into like a queue, and I have to approve them. This way I just don't get all these, crappy spam comments. And I didn't even think of, comments on there. So I went in that 7 days later after she commented, and I was going to be posting the next Tuesday night call on my university. And I'm like, oh, look, there's, all these approved these comments to approve. So there was I think 7 or 8 of them, whatever. I'm like, wow, people actually commented, and I was all excited, and like I said, with every single one of them, like I said, no matter what it is, I will always comment on every single one of them. My Facebook group that I have, my private Facebook group, any time someone comments on something, I will comment on every single one of them. And it's not like I'm asking engaging questions, but I want to engage with people. And and some of them was just like, oh, thank you so much, because it was just a very, general comment. But this one stood out to me as very different. I remember seeing, I'll be honest, I didn't really remember much of our conversation that we had 23 days earlier, because I interacted with a lot of people, but I remembered her face, and I saw it because the face was in the little the comment in the blog. I'm like, I know Corey Welsh. I'm like, I don't quite remember our conversation, but I know we've had one. And so when I saw this comment, the first thing I saw is I'm like, okay, here's someone who's a new coach that she says. She's launching her business. She obviously received a lot from this, love the energy. So I'm like, okay, she's liking what I'm doing. So I'm like, I'm going to make a comment. So basically from there, this is thread number 2. Like I said, 1 week later, I went right to email because with the comment, there is an email address. So I went right to email. And if you notice, it's just a very simple, general email. Hey, I noticed your comment from the last Tuesday night call where I was interviewing my client. Thanks so much. Glad you enjoyed it that much. And here's a great way to formulate things with the approach. It says, I see that you're just launching your coaching business. I'd love to hear more about that, where you are and what you're looking to do. So obviously when I said that, it's like I didn't really remember the conversation that we had, you know.
And that didn't piss me off.
Say it again,
Pardon
sorry?
my French. But it did not make me, I wasn't mad about that at all. That's not, In fact, I was like, oh, he emailed me. He didn't just respond to my, he actually emailed me. Okay.
What was it about that was important for you, it sounds like?
I thought it was really cool because it was taking that extra time, and you guys have to understand, this is coming from the cynic who is there. I get very annoyed when I'm being sold to, but this is different. He once again, you didn't come in saying, buy this, buy that, hire me, I want to be, your mentor. No, you were asking more questions, and that was cool. But I have to go back to, can I just go back to one point when I was listening to that call that I think everyone has to really remember as coaches too, and when we're trying to sell our message and our coaching is what stood out to me. I can't tell you 90% of actually what was said in your call with Stephen, but I took away 2 or 3 nuggets that stand out in my mind that I hadn't heard, or maybe they were just framed differently that you had stated. I think we get so focused on everything has to be perfect, and we have to really, the whole call has to just drive it home and resonate and this and that. But that's not what it was. With you, it was your enthusiasm, and you had thrown out a few nuggets, one of which I cited in the comment being, not letting other people dilute your message and staying focused. And to me, it's like a no-brainer, right? But at that moment, on that day, I was like, boom, wow, I needed to hear that. Because I was getting a lot of different feedback from different areas, and I was feeling like I couldn't focus, and I needed to just, stay on path, and that to me was very beneficial. So I just wanted to touch on that. It's great
sharing that. And as I'm hearing this stuff too is when people are engaging, like if you notice, this is all about timing. Like one of the things I talk about with selling is there's 2 things we're looking for, need and timing. So it's the need is what does that person need? What are they going for? What do they want? What do they need help with? What is their challenge? And then most importantly is because everyone has needs, but then what is the timing of that need? Why right now? So I can clearly start to hear now it is like, there was that call came at the right time with the right subject line that stood out enough for you to drop things and listen to it, made some impact. But then it was, this is part of my method to say with this second thread here, which obviously, Corey, you're like, that stood out to you. Is like it just wasn't a response to the blog comment. It's like, hey, I emailed you. And that's an important note on the things that I do is I will always take and I'll bring it to the email when possible. I'll use autoresponders with certain things, but I always recommend, I said this in another call I did last week, like even if I do a call and I'll get 150 emails, I will respond to every frickin' one of those emails in person via email. And a lot of other marketers would be like, are you kidding me? That is such a waste of time. You could use an autoresponder. And you know what? I could use an autoresponder, but what I like to teach people is you know what? You can get back to every single person. Yes, it takes a lot more time, but you know what you do is you engage with people and you connect with people. And the people that want to connect with you, you will find and you will sort out of that, let's say, 150 emails, and you will find the 10, 15, 20 people that want to engage. And out of that 10, 15, 20 people, you will go through things like I'm doing here, and you will get 2, 3, 5 clients out of that.
Autoresponders work for many industries, but coaching is not one of them. you're totally right. You need that connection. You need to prove the connection. That's exactly right.
And because now you obviously as a coach know about coaching, but it doesn't change anything. In fact, I think in a lot of ways you could be more skeptical about it because you do know a lot more about coaching.
Yeah.
But let's keep going on because this is good stuff. So let's go on. I just asked general questions. Hey, I'd love to hear more about your business. You wrote 40 minutes afterwards, and if you notice on this, the number 3 here, this thread, you definitely wrote some more, like just a lot more information. So just kind of summarizing with what you wrote there, Corey, just talk about, with your response and what's going through your mind at this point.
Yeah, so at that point, let's see, I'm just reading it right now to refresh my memory. So this is, this is when I was talking about your call.
Yeah, the third one there.
Yeah.
So you talked about the call is extremely powerful. You've been struggling defining your niche and target audience. And then you reiterated, how off the cuff I was and made an awkward opportunity and made it into a coaching session. So you commented on that already, but then this ended up what you writing to me.
Right. Yeah, and so I just told you where I was as far as my niche. And I was almost kind of leaving the door open for you to sell yourself to me, for lack of a better word.
Interesting.
Yeah, without really knowing what I was doing.
Talk about that briefly. This is important.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't occur to me until I'm reading through this, again, the third or fourth time. I feel like, number one, it's very important for people to know how and why they resonate with others, which is why I told you, your enthusiasm, your energy is contagious. And really open myself up to be a little bit more vulnerable, to once again just kind of test the waters, to find out, okay, I'm still non-committal. I don't know if what he has to offer is going to be what I need, but we'll see. Boom, throw this out there and try to open myself up a little bit and see what you come back with. So.
Interesting. Yeah, and that's it's good to hear that piece because, one thing I noticed here is, she responded fairly quickly, 40 minutes after I wrote, as it says up there. Obviously you gave, if you will, a bunch of testimonials. Like you basically share with me, like, I love the call. It was so impactful. My energy, enthusiasm is contagious. So when anyone is ever talking to us about, how we are and how we engage, those are signs that obviously people like us, and those are signs that they're connecting with us as well. And then the second paragraph, you're going into obviously, more of what you're doing. You're trying to be more vulnerable, like you said. And then you asked me a question. So what you said, I would love to hear a recording of one of your calls around this subject if you think it can help with a breakthrough. Right?
Yeah.
So obviously you're looking for a breakthrough. And when I see this sentence, one thing I think of, without even knowing your side of that, is I'm thinking, okay, she needs some help. She's kind of asking for some help. That's essentially what that means to me. And obviously that's what you were. But interesting point is that this is where it's good to say, clients never, or potential clients, they don't come out right away and say, hey, listen, can you help me with this, right? And it's cool to hear you say, it's like, yeah, I'm kind of just like throwing it out there to see, what he does, So let's go on to the fourth thread. This is where it starts getting interesting here. Well, it already was interesting, but so I responded 19 minutes after she wrote. So here's an important point. When I wrote, I said, hey, I was just going to call you, but I don't have your number. I feel like reaching out. This is a point I want to make here. Whenever I get to this point where there's a connection and I see like someone is almost reaching out for help or asking for help, and like she did in that question, if I have someone's phone number, I will call them up immediately. And I on the Selling Coaching University, I have a video called "Pick Up the Damn Phone." So I believe it's under Get Clients, or you can just type in the search, "Pick Up the Damn Phone." I think it's like maybe an 8-minute video or whatever, and it kind of outlines this more. But I call people up because it's like, why the heck am I going to like keep emailing this person? Because think about the warped conversation we can have and where it can go in terms of connection and finding out more. I'm not going to try and sell or anything yet. I'm still going to stay behind that, if you will, metaphorical line. But I'm like, I want to call this person up and have more of a conversation. So I'm like, hey, I was going to call you up, but I didn't have your number. And it's like right away I'm like, hey, thanks for the amazing testimony. You're being so open and with where you are. And I talk about, hey, launching a business is it can be very overwhelming to say the least. It's tough, especially when we're super passionate about what we do and we just want to coach. And so I'm writing because I'm like, I know what she's going through. So whenever you're working with your potential clients, talk about it in terms of like, share what you feel they're going through, because they're going to, like, when they read that stuff, you're either going to be right on or you're not going to be on. But if you know what they're going through, share about it because it shows you that emotion and they can connect with it.
And what was cool about this was the last paragraph, though.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll continue on, and I'll throw it to you. So I say, hey, I'll be posting call number 6 this week shortly once it uploads. That might help with your message, content being you, et cetera, and I give them the title of the call. So, she asked me in the previous, email, hey, do you have a recording around this subject about basically branding yourself, the niche, so forth and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And even right there, I'm like, you know what, I'm not going to necessarily, sell myself, like, too much. I want to give her, like, she asked for a resource, and I have a resource. Hey, I'm going to post it now. Here's this great
You're not going to dangle the carrot. Yep.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So now here's the transition. This is the key thing right here. So I'll say this, and then I want to throw it back to you, Corey, so I can tell you want to say something about this. At this point, there's always got to be a transition, all right? What I mean by a transition is there's got to be a transition in the conversation, whether it's on the phone, in person, or email, where when we see that there's a need and the timing's right and we get the best sense of it, and obviously there's never going to be an obvious sign. If it is, fantastic. But basically the sign is everything leading up to now in her enthusiasm and her engagement, her speed of response, the amount that she's sharing with me, the connections that we've had. I can sense her need. I can sense the timing of it. I gave her a resource here. I said, see what that does. And then also, now I want you to pay attention to my wording with this. This is very important. I say, hey, I'm not sure of the timing of this for you, but I cannot help but ask if you're open to speaking with me. I so can help guide you through this step by step so it can be easy and fun. I don't know if you're in a place where you are or would consider working with me as your mentor coach on this. I only ask because I see you're going through this and so passionately want to move forward. If not, I certainly understand and will continue to help you in any way that I can with my education that I'm putting out there, etc. Let me know your honest thoughts and we can go from there. I appreciate you. Triple exclamation mark. Breathe, quadruple exclamation mark. And so I'm going to say my approach to this is like, I'm on my end going like, oh my God, I can so help this girl. I so would love to work with someone who's as passionate about this. I can tell she needs some help. And I still am staying behind this line, but if you notice, this is making the transition. And this is the language I use. I'm not sure of the timing. I don't want to assume that the timing's right. Say, hey, I'm not sure of the timing, but I want to ask if you're open to speaking with me. I didn't even say complimentary session because at this point I'm like, I could say complimentary session, but I don't know yet, like for sure about her need and timing. I'm sensing it, but I personally like to really clarify it and get it open and like make it very black and white before I offer a complimentary session to somebody. And that's why I say it. I'm like, hey, you know what? That's why I tried to call her because I wanted to speak with her first. So I say, hey, I'm asking, hey, would you open for speaking with me? And that conversation in my mind was to really identify, is this person, in this space where mentor coaching would work? I also broached the topic. I don't know if you're in a place where you'd consider working with me. I only ask because I'm just super passionate and I want to move you forward. And if you're not, I understand, and I want to help you no matter what. So I'm really staying on the other side of that fence, so to speak, but I'm also making a transition. Corey, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Absolutely. And going back to, your talk about working with you as a mentor coach. So in follow-up messages, it's, I go on to say how I have trouble with the whole life coach title and why that is. And so the fact that you, number one, were like, if you want to work with me as your mentor coach, to me, boom, that resonated much better than if you were to say, I'd like to offer you a complimentary test session, this and that. And that would have been too scripted. This is more still non-committal, not pushy, but you gave me an out, which is cool. And then you also was like that validation, I appreciate you, breathe, like you got it. You were in your heart alongside with me and not trying to be Mr. Logical, which I anticipated. So this is a breath of fresh air, for sure.
What did I get? You said I got it.
You got it. You just, I don't know, I felt like you understood where I was coming from. And I can't even explain it.
No, I get it from there. I just wanted to see, like, if you could elaborate on it. Yeah. And you got it, and that's the biggest thing.
I thought you cut out.
No, with this whole thing, this is what I want to show you is like, it's non-committal. I like how you said that because it's exactly the approach. This method is it's non-committal. And one thing you said is awesome because it's exactly what I do and what I want to teach people is I gave her an out. It's like, hey, listen, if not, it's okay. If not, I certainly understand. No big deal. I'm not attached to this at all. This is like really my thought to it is like I'm not attached to this at all. If you're considering this, hey, I'm all on board about talking about that and seeing if it works. But if not, no big deal. I'm like, hey, I'm going to help you no matter what. And it's great that you said that. And things like I appreciate you and breathe. It's like I can tell. I've been there before too. It's like there's a lot of anxiety around it. There's a lot you're going through, especially when you graduate. When you're starting a new business up, it's just like it's over frickin' whelming, right?
Yeah. And I appreciate your confidence too. When you're like, I can so help you, guide you through this, and it can be easy and fun. And fun, that is one of my biggest values. So boom, that stood out to me.
Yeah.
Like, wow, I'm really taking this so seriously. I just need to chill out. That's me.
That's a good reminder.
Cool.
Yeah, it's so good to hear you say this stuff again. And when we're thinking about this from when we are engaging with people, obviously, this script isn't going to work with everybody, and it's not obviously a script is the point of it there. But you can definitely use some of this language, this non-committal. I'm not sure if the timing's right for you, but I couldn't help but ask. Show your excitement. It's great you talk about that confidence. I'm a big advocate of weaving in our confidence. Weaving in your boldness, because it's that boldness and that confidence, not the ego, but it's our boldness and confidence that's going to come across to people, especially when they're overwhelmed, whatever niche we have. People are needing that guidance, that help. And we're taught in some ways, as a coach, it's like, well, we're detached and we're objective, we're non-judgmental. It's like sometimes it's like, you know what? Reach down and pull their ass up, or put your arm out and say, listen, take my arm. If you don't have the belief right now, I've got enough belief in the both of us where you can lean on me. You can borrow some of my belief. Show people your confidence, not ego, but show them that confidence. They will appreciate that. But when you weave it in between, just your passion, and the great part is we're all passionate with what we do. So it's being more comfortable showing that. And the biggest thing is asking. We've got to ask at some point. So moving on from here, like right underneath it says, then I found her number in our email thread, and I called and left a message. So it's like literally like after I sent that email, and Corey, I know we're going over. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm totally fine. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So we're just going to go with it. So thank you.
Yeah.
I found your number in the email thread, and so I'm scrolling through because I'll tell you before I sent that email, I went on Facebook and I went into the About section, and I'm like, oh, her number's not listed, and I'm like, is she in my email database? And I'm like, maybe she put her number in. I'm like, I can't find this person's number, and sure enough, it's right in the email thread. So I'm like, after I sent that email, I'm like, screw it, I'm going to call her anyways. So I called you, and I just left this long, blabbering, passionate email.
And for the record, I was out for a run.
Yeah, and you said that in the email.
But I wonder, like, had I been there, like, would I have answered the call?
Yeah,
I don't know.
So I'm curious, like, with that, I sent that message. You responded afterwards, hey, thanks so much for your call, went out for a run, wish we could have connected, love to chat with you. But when you came back from the run and get that message, like, go over, like, I'm curious to hear, and for people to hear, like, the thought process, because I think a lot of people are afraid to pick up the phone, number one, but is it too much to call somebody and, leave them a message and email them? What's going on in your head?
I think it was hilarious. The message was hilarious. You were you were genuinely laughing, like, oh my gosh, I'm going through the whole trying to find my number. It was just very honest and raw, and it showed me that, you weren't this perfect being, but you just laugh at yourself, and it goes back to the whole fun thing. It's just have fun, connect. I thought that was cool. It was a Friday evening. I think it was like Friday at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock your time.
Yep.
And, I came back and I listened to that. I thought, wow, that is really cool, but I wanted to be able to devote more than a minute before I had to pick up my kids. So, I sent you that message, and I was glad that we were able to connect the following Tuesday.
Yeah. So, and that's a good point, is like when I leave my messages, like, if I leave a message, like the story that I just told here on the phone tonight is exactly what I left in the message. I'm like, here I am, scrolling through, looking in, I told you, right? I'm looking into your Facebook, and like, I'm just honest. Like, it's like I was
in my
basically
signature. Yeah.
Yeah, like stalking you, and basically it's in your signature in the email thread. So but it's like, just be yourself with people. Like, we don't have to be anything more than ourselves, and people will appreciate that. And that's the model that I go by. And obviously, it's great. It's great to hear that confirmation. So you wrote a quick email. Hey, I went out for a run. When's a good time to connect? Either the weekend or Monday. So if we scroll down, now we're in the number 6 thread. I'm like, I responded 6 minutes after you wrote, and I'm like, hey, good for you, going for a run. I'm booked on Tuesday, so I basically gave you a time. Does that work? And again, right here, I just wrote, hey, we can just talk a little and see where we can go from there. And I wrote that purposely just to reiterate. It's just like, hey, this is just like, hey, let's have a quick conversation and see where we can go. Please confirm that works. And so go ahead. What were you going to say about that?
No, I was going to say, it didn't, no guarantees whatsoever. So that was very non-committal. That's good, yeah. Very
non-committal. If you notice, I'm still keeping it very casual. I still haven't really crossed that line aggressively at all. But I've made my presentation, if you will, and, we're moving forward. So in next email, number 7, great, Tuesday works fine. And again, these responses, if you go back to a lot of these responses, like we're both responding, even with the run, you're getting back to me, and it's either, 10, 20, 15 minutes, 5 minutes. It's going pretty quick. And I always say that when we're responding with people, whether it's via messaging or email, like, be on it. Like, we can't always be on it because we have stuff going on, but when stuff's happening like this, engage with people, and that's your top priority. This is what I would refer to in my other videos and teaching as this is revenue-producing activity. You don't know where it's going to go. There's no guarantees, but it can lead to, obviously it can lead to clients. It can lead to something more. If not anything, it can lead to just a really happy person, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you didn't hire me, it would have been okay, or we didn't go to that next level, but I would have serviced the heck out of you, and you would have been a fan for life, hopefully.
Yeah.
So anyway, you confirm the time, and then in the thread number 8, again, I responded 5 minutes after that. It's like, hey, you know what? I kept it real casual. I'm like, great, before then, answer these few questions, get them to me before we talk. And I asked these questions, what's your motivation for wanting to speak with me? What do you hope to accomplish by the end of our talk? I want to find out, I've got to find out at this point more. It's like, why is she agreeing to this call? Like, I need to know that stuff. And I'm curious, Corey,
awesome.
For you, tell me what that email did for you.
Sorry to interrupt, but I have to tell you that was really cool, because I knew right then and there that was almost you saying, if you're not serious about this, now's not the right time. Like those were very poignant questions. Like, all right, there's a goal, and which was great. So I'm like, okay, this guy means business. And I sat on this for several days, right?
Yeah, you responded. The next response after this, the 9th thread, was on Monday morning. So you basically took the weekend.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I sat on those questions for the weekend. Responded to you.
She responded Monday morning, and that's exactly what those questions are. Whenever I do a complimentary session, which we'll see in a couple more threads, we're getting to the end here, but a couple more threads is that I send 4 questions with the confirmation of a complimentary session. Those are 2 of the first questions in a complimentary session, and I ask those because it's like, while we're just having a conversation, like, we need to know as coaches, like, we don't want to just, we can't do this with everybody, right? We can't just be, connecting and calling and talking with everybody. We need to make sure we invest our time with people who are serious about doing things. And I can tell Corey was serious at this point. I didn't know how serious or where the timing was for her, but I knew I needed to know more. And if you notice, as I ask and I engage a lot of questions and open up dialogue and participate in the dialogue, I'm getting out more and more as we go along. And the less I talk and the more I ask her and the more I engage with it, the more I'm going to find out and get to that point where, I realize, okay, that this is the point where it feels like we deserve to have a complimentary session. So when you replied back, on Monday morning, I didn't expect a response from you really until Monday, anyways. But when I got, first thing Monday morning, that was a sign. It's like, yeah, the weekend's over and it's 9:30 in the morning basically, and here are the answers to your questions, and so what I'm looking for here is hey, my main motivation is how I chose my path and my niche, the things I've experienced in the process. You wrote about things like I'm listening to your calls and what's drawing in you in the most, and you talked about the no BS content, energy and confidence. I could see you're avoiding the label as a life coach, so I'm seeing a lot of your challenges, the cynicalness you have with sales, and how you talked about it's people have very little value in their message. And I got to tell you, Corey, when I read that, I was like on fire.
Yeah.
Like I was writing stuff down in your message for notes for myself, going like, value in your message. I'm like, I'm going to do a call and value in your message because that's what it's all about. And it was number one, it was reassuring to me because I'm like, okay, wow, this is good because this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to do this, and you were getting this from what I was doing. So it felt good for me, but I could tell you were receiving this, and it was impactful. And obviously you said, can you tell how much in my head? And you just kept going on. I'm listening to your call from Tuesday. You're hitting the nail on the head. And so ultimately, I'd love to explore the opportunity for mentor coaching, and if I can make it work from a financial perspective. So, Corey, when you wrote this email back, like, just summarize, like, what are you thinking at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I was already sold by you, and I keep using the word sales and sold, but
they're words. They're real words.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to make this work based on we hadn't even really talked, and so this is just your messaging, and I was like, yeah, and we didn't discuss money or anything. So at that point, I was like, yeah, I'm serious about this, and which was awesome, and your follow up was great. I felt like I was continuing to take more of your time, your free time. You're like, oh, complimentary session, this and that. Like, whoa, all right, cool. Yeah. Do a
this is good.
session.
So that we're looking at the next one here, number 10, where I basically responded the next day, which is the morning of our call, and I'm like, hey, I'm super excited. And remember, this call was just like a quick call to have just a conversation.
Right.
And so I wrote, I'm like, hey, after reading what you wrote and seeing how serious you are about moving your business forward and considering working with me, I'm thinking today we should block off the full hour and do a comp session. I feel like you're in the place, I feel like since you're in this place, let's get this thing going, and we'll be able to get a good start. You're clear on your direction, and you can get a good feel for what to do together. And this is why I say, and if you can see value in it, we can discuss how you can hire me and move forward and make it work from a financial perspective. How does that sound?
Mm-hmm.
That wording is huge. If you notice, like, I'm slow, right? Like, you're basically saying, like, yeah, I want to work with you.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, in not so many words. If we look in thread 9, I'm like, yeah, like, and it's not like I don't see that, but this is just the way I work, and I want to teach people. Is this is a very telling email, And when I wrote like that, is like I'm not assuming anything. I never assume anything, and that's the biggest thing here. Is I'm just like, hey, I'm super excited. I'm just like, hey, you know what? I can tell like you're serious about this. I feel like we should just do, let's do the full hour. Do you have that basically? And this wording is important, I wanted to let you know that, hey, this is the thing we can get going. I'm like, we can get you some good clarity and direction, and you're going to get a good feel of how we could work together. And if you see value in it, we can discuss how you can hire me and move forward. What did that sentence do for you?
Yeah, I mean, what was key about this is that it gave me no opportunity really to say no, and you still guided the conversation. You were still kind of in control. You guided the conversation, and then you followed the last paragraph where you said, answer these 4 questions, get them back to me, if it's good for you. And so naturally I'm like, oh, what are these 4 questions? And so, it gave me no opportunity to be like, my non-committal me, it gave me no opportunity to make excuses. Oh, well, I don't really have an hour, or, I'm not sure if this is the right time. And I feel like with a lot of our clients, we hit a wall. Well, you didn't really give me an opportunity. But you didn't have to do that by saying, this is what we're going to do. It was very just, hey, if this is what you're interested in, boom, this is the next step.
Yes, they guided you. That's important.
Yep.
We've got to guide people and tell them the next step. Here's what we're going to do. Answer these questions. And I always like with the previous email, it says, how does that sound? So I don't just tell you what we're going to do. I propose something. Yeah. Here's what's could happen. How does that sound? And I wrote, if that's good, and you have time before our call, please answer. And I'm just very like permission-based. I call this permission-based selling. If that's good and you have time before our call, please answer these 4 questions and get them to me. And I made sure I said, hey, I know you already answered a couple of them. If you want to answer it again, you're just going to get more clarity. Yeah. And then that's the 4 questions that are on the thread now. These are the 4 questions that I ask every person to get back to me before a complimentary session. This further qualifies. This whole process is just qualification, right? Mm-hmm. It's just qualifying somebody. It's connecting and then qualifying and then, making that approach once we find that qualification. And these questions are very intentional. I'm not going to go through them in detail right now, but the same 2 that I asked you before, the motivation for one in the call and what you hope to achieve. But the key one is the 4th one is if you see value in our time together, would you consider hiring me? If you notice, it's very important. We must go into a complimentary coaching call with a potential client knowing that this is kind of the trial. And at the end of this, like the whole point of this call is for you to consider, because you're consider working with me.
Yeah.
How clear was that to you?
Absolutely. I mean, going into it.
Going into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's vital. And that's why in this number 4 question, and even in the previous email thread, I'll write, if we can discuss how you can hire me and move forward and make it work from a financial perspective. And I only wrote from a financial perspective because in the previous email, you wrote, and I would see if I can make it work from a financial perspective, which I'm curious, how real was that?
At the time, it was fairly real, but I'm also a firm believer in if you see enough value in it, you'll be willing to invest anything.
Absolutely.
And I really, at that point, I saw a lot of value. I saw immense value after our comm session. So, I'm kind of looking down the road, big picture, in what I can gain. and it's invaluable, truly. So I'm really excited to move forward and grow my business and work with you alongside. So that's awesome.
That's cool. That's really cool. So yeah, and the last thread there is number 11, and you responded. This is like 50 minutes before our call, and it's great. You know what? She answered the questions again, and then bottom line is if you look at the last question is what I want to highlight. You know, if you see value in our time together, would you consider hiring with me? You know, if so, no, why is now the right timing? And you wrote, yes, I would. I absolutely need to start making money with coaching ASAP, and if coaching investment makes sense and fits within my budget, I see value in that. So those are just signs that I want to see how people answer those questions. We spoke at 1 p.m., and then afterwards you hired me, and we moved forward.
Yeah.
So, I just love this, be able to show this and highlight this for people because I think it really outlines, it's definitely a particular style of doing things, and I'm not saying that, everyone has to adopt this style, but it's a very a permissive-based style. It's staying on the outside, if you will, on the perimeter, and it's just like if you're walking up to someone's house, it's like you're kind of knocking at the door and just like, hey, let's just have a conversation. And we can have a conversation through the door at first. We can have a conversation through the screen. And even you opened the screen, if you will. You opened the door and said, hey, come on in. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to come in yet.
Yeah.
You know, really. And then even when you basically invited me in, I said, okay, I can come in. But I'm like, you know what? There's a door. Just tell me to go through that door at any time, and I'm gone, and I'll still help you however you want me to. That's kind of that approach. Corey, I'm curious. Thank you so much for staying on. I know we went a little bit over as well in giving your insight. I'm curious before we go, what, if anything, else do you have to say about this process? And I'm curious what you've learned from being a part of this.
Gosh, I've learned a ton. Even just talking through it on this call, I hope others can see value in it as well. And after going through this again, I'm realizing that allowing others to talk about themselves is so key. And, we as coaches, so many times, we know we have a lot to offer, right? And even if we have tons of confidence about that, I think what should be highlighted is the fact that you didn't. In fact, I know very little. I don't think I asked you once about people you had worked with before or your credentials or your resume. I don't know anything about that. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you listened and you spent a lot of time, you invested a lot of time up front. And to me, that's invaluable. And that's what makes me excited to work with you and know that I'm really going to see a lot of benefit.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to get going as well. And that's the thing is one of the things that I love doing with people, and I want to get to this point with you as well, is I love to, when I'm working with clients, is I love to get to the point where you're out there sharing your message, doing events live or online, and then you send me an email thread of stuff that you're going through with your clients right now. Because I do this with my clients, and I'll write back like as if they were my client, and I might call you up quick and say, tell me a little bit more about this so I understand it, and I'll write responses for you that you can either use those responses or you can then draft your own, put it in your own words, because I'm not doing it for you, but I'm doing it so you can get an idea and start to learn the process. And once you learn I'm telling you, once you learn this process, it's not like it's like, it's a hard and fast, like here's the process, but you can tell there's definitely a method to it, if you will, and there's a pacing to it, and there's sensing of timing and where that person is and permission and all that good stuff, but it's really, really fun. So I can't wait to do this with you.
I'm excited. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah, so thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me tonight. Appreciate it.